So today we're going to go through the 4 reasons why conditioning and endurance training is actually overrated for a lot of youth athletes that play a lot of team and field-based sports. So as sports begins to make its return, yet again, the problem that we're going to start to see is a lot of kids are going to try and get themselves fitter and faster and just develop more endurance for when sport returns. A lot of people, when they think of getting fitter, they got to run. Personally, for someone who played a field-based sport, playing rugby league, running wasn't really the thing that I was good at, especially endurance-based work, but I was half decent when it came to more the short, sharp, repetitive nature of what rugby league really is about. And this is what a lot of sports really represent, is there isn't really many sports where you're running for long distances continuously unless you're doing actual track events. So anything from like 1500 onwards, you actually want to focus on doing more endurance-based work, which makes total sense. When it actually comes down to more team and field-based sports, we actually want to try and take into consideration what is actually at play at the end of the day. Running is great till it's not. The one thing I've noticed now that is a lot of kids starting to get back into running for footy or whatever it may be, they're going to start to neglect other areas that are actually going to help make them more successful when they do make their triumphant return back to the off-season and the pre-season for their sport. One of the other issues that we're actually going to see is because sport in Victoria hasn't even been a thing, even sport last year as well, we're actually going to see more of a decline in muscular strength, tendon strength, ligament strength in a lot of youth athletes. And what they're going to do is they're going to start running as a result to get themselves fitter, which I think is totally good and totally normal, but really it's gonna lead to more of a recipe of disaster. So what we need to focus on is actually getting them stronger first, which we'll talk about a little bit later on as one of our points. So right now we'll take you through the 4 reasons why conditioning training is actually overrated. Point number 1, conditioning is actually already being built within the games themselves or even in the training sessions themselves. As a coach or a parent, if you actually observed the way the kids are actually breathing, measure their heart rate really quickly, just grabbing that pulse, you'll actually start to notice that the heart rate is actually going to be elevated during this time. What we're actually doing is the cardiovascular system, the cardiorespiratory systems are actually already working as they are, and we're actually going to develop fitness that way. So that's why at a young age, if we want to develop fitness in kids, we just get them playing sport. And this is literally the same thing when it comes to youth sport as well. As they start to get older, more into adolescence, we want to make sure that they can build their endurance through their actual sport and actually structure it in a way we're not working over the top, but not underworking as well, and not getting the right adaptations that we're looking for when it comes to endurance training or conditioning. The next issue I actually want to talk about is running technique. Now, this should have been point number 1, but we're going to put it in as point number 2. So with running technique, a lot of kids these days really haven't been shown the proper mechanics on how to run, unless they've done track and field back in little athletics days. With programs like Auskick, I know Milo Cricket, there is a lot of running involved in these sports, but there is no emphasis on teaching them how to run. We teach them how to handball, we teach them how to kick, we teach them how to bowl, we teach them how to bat, but we're not teaching them how to run properly. And what happens is if they're not learning the fundamental movements of how to run, or they're actually breaking it down in a way that they can run efficiently, it's potentially going to be a lot harder to reverse these compensation strategies or these poor movement mechanics in a way that we actually want them to run and be able to be successful with their running long term. So I'm going to give you a bit of an analogy here. So you think of a handwriting analogy, right? Throughout our primary school years, we're always focusing on breaking down the skill of writing each of the letters, having all those guidelines, making you're not going above the middle line for writing your lowercase a of anything like that. This is the same thing when it comes to running as well. We want to really break down the skill of what running is, getting them a lot more confident, showing them that this is good running mechanics and how it's going to help translate later on down the track. Then we want to start layering onto it. So when it comes to writing, you start to do your B's, and then you do your C's, and you do your D's, and until you're actually starting to form sentences with your writing, and it looks neat. This is the same thing with running. We want running to look really neat. We want to see it as being efficient, and we want to start early. If you can start 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, earlier the better with good running technique. Point number 3, sports coaches usually prescribe conditioning within their actual sessions. Now, if you go back to our other video where we actually break down what we actually discuss in terms of sports coaches need to be sports coaches and need to get someone who specializes in that area. Now, when it comes to conditioning and specific conditioning as well, they should be outsourcing this to someone who has basic understanding of the principles of fitness and be able to appropriately develop the kids, especially if you're working at the younger ages as well. We want to make sure the training is fun and enjoyable, especially at the younger ages, but then at the older ages, we want to start to be able to challenge them, but not burn them out. So you're kind of on a pendulum in terms of what the training should be. And like I said in the first point, look, the conditioning's already been developed. If you want to develop more conditioning, it needs to be structured in a manner that's not going to burn them out. And 9 times out of 10, as I've discussed in other videos, most of them will actually prescribe way too much conditioning and it just burns the athletes out. With endurance training during the sessions, like I said before, it's already been trained within the sessions. So then you can actually focus on other areas, more the tactical side, more the skill component side, and even getting more specific in certain areas. If you want to play a contact sport like football or rugby and you want to do some more tackling and grappling, that's another great way to actually build your capacity that's more specific to the sport as well. And it's done in a way where it's actually fun, it's enjoyable, it's competitive, and it's a win-win-win in so many ways. Then the last thing I wanted to talk about now, as you kind of see and know that I'm more into the strength side than anything else. I think the strength side, when it comes to developing athletes and even developing the endurance side for a lot of athletes, is really neglected. A lot of the kids that we've worked with here at Inner Athlete, we don't even do any conditioning with them when we first start off. We really focus on moving well, getting them really competent in a lot of the basic movements that we prescribe. As a result, when they go do their fitness testing, whether it's with their sport or with their school or anything along those lines, they're getting better times. They're getting fitter, they're getting faster. One of the kids that we're working with at the moment, Jordan, is one of our tennis players. You know, all we do is basic strength work. We're doing some strength endurance work at the moment. His previous beep test was a 10-1. Then he ended up getting over a 13 about 6 months later. All we did is we focused on strength training. We did some aerobic endurance and strength endurance work as well, because he's been doing a lot of circuit-based work. And we didn't get him to do any runs or whatsoever. We just focused on movement mechanics, and that translated quite nicely to his beep test, and he's a lot fitter. In summary, let's go through the 4 points. So number 1, sports coaches need to understand their actual training sessions are already having some sort of cardiovascular and cardiorespiratory fitness component included. You gotta measure it somehow. So whether you just ask the kids on a scale of 1 to 10, or you just observe their breathing rates, or just check their heart rate. And this gets them to understand the physiological changes that are happening through the sessions as well. And it's an easy way to monitor the intensity of the session. Number 2 is poor running technique. Poor technique or anything can only lead to catastrophic things. So we want to make sure that we slow the kids down, teach them to run well, teach them to move well, and that's going to transfer in actually improving their endurance, but also their work capacity as well. And more than likely, they're going to find running more enjoyable as a result. So then you create a lot more buy-in and they're going to absolutely love what they do. Point number 3, coaches need to understand what they're actually prescribing within the sessions as well. So we need to make sure that we're actually doing their training and understand whether or not they're actually getting adaptations, whether it's more skill specific from more of a neuromuscular standpoint and skill acquisition, or whether or not they're actually doing more small-sided games where they can actually develop their fitness through that and also test them in an environment where it's high intensity, getting their heart rate up, getting their fitness up, and we can continue to develop on that. Then last one is the underappreciation of strength training. This is a real big area of ours that we believe in that needs to be more focused and more developed than any other area, because it's the strength from the muscles, the tendons, the ligaments, the movement competencies. This is what's really led a lot of our athletes to become quite successful in their own domain, is just getting them stronger. The fitness side really just looked after itself. You could have someone who has great endurance, but if they can't put the hammer down and they've got someone who's a little bit stronger than them, but the same level of endurance, they're gonna be able to break away from them as well. So it doesn't matter what sport, strength is gonna play a critical factor moving forward. So if you found this video really valuable and you want to know more about the services that we offer, check out the box below. You'll find links to our website. If you want to follow us on Instagram as well, we've got heaps of content on there in terms of what strength exercises that we like to prescribe to a lot of our athletes as well, or if you want to keep up just with our daily content in general. But if you want more help, DM us, message us, pop a comment below, ask questions, and we'll get back to you, and we want to help you with your own athletic endeavors.